Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Standout Agency podcast. I'm Gareth Healy. I'm an ex-agency owner and now an advisor to independent marketing agencies, helping them with their growth and development of their businesses.
And I'm Callum Healy, and I help independent marketing agencies as well. And my role is all about helping them effectively adopt and embed AI into their operating model.
Today's episode is entitled Nobody Agreed the Height of the Wall. A strange title, which we'll explain in a few minutes. But ultimately, we want to talk today about value pricing, don't we?
Absolutely. Yes. And I think it's always been an important topic. I think pricing in general is something that is very subjective for a lot of businesses, especially now that AI is here. That is ultimately all about time. And so how you can effectively price, and time is a big part of that. It's all changing, and
Yes.
so it's important to cover.
100%, yeah, because last week in episode 2, if you tuned in then, hopefully you did, we talked about timesheets and the importance of tracking time for agencies. We still believe that's important, even in the age of AI. But this episode is ultimately confronting a big issue that we've had in the industry for a long time, in that our industry, the marketing agency sector, has primarily priced their work in most cases for most types of agencies, not all, but most types of agencies, on hours. We're priced on time and materials. So for a long time, agencies have been taking human labour, of course, and the hours that they have from their employees, doing some great work, and then charging that on to clients at a premium, either specifically by an hourly rate. We've done 10 hours work. Here's the price for 10 hours times whatever hourly rate it is. There's your there's the client's bill, or costing and pricing a piece of work up. But part of that pricing process is to define and to communicate with the client the hours that's taken. So hours has for a long time been a variable in the pricing mechanism of agencies, and we've been trying to get away from that for a long time.
Because ultimately, time is part of the value equation, and like you said, Gareth, last week we talked all about the importance of measuring time, so you can quantify the effort that you've put into certain tasks, and it's a big part of knowledge work because people are almost the raw materials. Time is the cost in that sense. But although it's part of the equation, it's not the whole story. And so it's worth tracking, but there is a lot of nuance to talk about, which we're going to cover today.
Yeah, and with AI, of course, this has been an issue that people have talked about for a while. How do we get away from hourly-based pricing? AI is accelerating that conversation rapidly, isn't it? Or should be, at least.
Yes, it's almost as if the processes that you once might have had a good idea about how long they usually take, now that can change. It has changed rapidly because AI has made some processes 10 times quicker, maybe some even slower because you're starting to be too much of a perfectionist or you're over-servicing in certain areas. So it's a topic worth discussing. Okay, so Gareth, you mentioned at the start in the intro there, nobody agreed the height of the wall, which I'm struggling to work out exactly what that means. Are you going to put up a wall in our garden after this podcast? Or are you some sort of a DIY expert, like a side hustle?
Suddenly?
Yeah.
No, not really. No, I'm not, I think we'll leave that to experts and things. I don't mind changing the odd plug and light bulb and things, but not walls. So no, nobody agreed the height of the wall. Strange title, but I wrote a piece on Substack recently, which was inspired by this idea. It was something that we were working on, actually, not a wall, but a pricing. We were doing some pricing for a client of yours, actually. Yeah. And my mind turned back to this value pricing model, because we discovered when we were talking about that particular project that the client that we were talking to didn't fully understand what they wanted and what they were trying to get.
Yeah.
Because it was in AI, it's not something that you're their expert in that sense, and it is new territory, this. So they didn't fully understand what they wanted. They knew they wanted something, but not absolutely clear.
Yeah.
And it struck me that in the first step if we want to start to value price our work, and a crucial step is to be very clear on both sides, the client and us as an agency, what we're actually building here.
Yeah.
And the wall thing came from, I was thinking, in a very simplistic terms and analogy, if you get a builder round to build you a garden wall, you've got to specify, or he wants you to specify how long the wall is, how high it is, what it's made of, what you want it to look like, and you both agree at that point with your builder that's the brief, that's the requirement. So it's very clear. Then the builder goes away and decides and prices that up for you, and they will take into account time in that simple scenario. How long is it going to take me, the builder, to build that wall for this chap? And they'll also, of course, take into account raw materials, the price of stones or bricks or whatever it is they're building it with. So there's hourly rates, as you said earlier, do come into it. Our time is a variable, but the actual outcome is a garden wall of a certain height, of a certain length, of a certain material, and a certain look. And it just struck me that in many cases, and we experienced it ourselves, the agency and the clients and that the agency is working with are not always 100% clear on what that outcome is, and that's a poor foundation for pricing on a value base.
Yeah, so it's almost like you have a client and they aren't paying for time. That's not why they've hired you. It's a case of they're paying for value in a certain format. And it's true, we have a recent project of mine with a client that we're trying to define the correct scope, and AI isn't a wall. It's something that is a new piece of technology that a large part of why people are so focused on embedding it right is that they don't know exactly how to use it and how it works. Yeah. And so, especially when it comes to AI and in many agency processes, of course, I think this applies to any form of business that you're doing. Yeah.
Creativity, the creative process, my background as an agency.
Exactly.
That is an intangible and ill-defined thing. It's not building a physical thing.
Yeah.
Creative work or introducing AI into businesses is difficult as well.
Exactly. And I think ultimately to determine value, you have to be clear on what exactly you're delivering.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, hourly based pricing can be almost a route away from determining that clarity and thinking the process through in great depth, because it's easier to just measure how long the process took rather than delivering or determining the value of the work that you do
up front.
And a big thing that I've come to realize is that it's very important to determine or to investigate and figure out the ROI that you can give to the client for certain projects, so that you're able to speak their language in the sense of, okay, this is the work that I'm doing for you. It's valuable because I will help you alleviate this pain point or save you this many hours. So it's clarity on your behalf to your client. Yeah. You need to know, you need to determine the value of what it is that you're servicing.
Yeah,
with a wall and the analogy, it's easier to determine,
because that's a tangible thing, isn't it? You can see it, or you maybe you're replacing a wall, or you need a new wall. But when it's done and when it's in production in the build, you can see it. Whereas a lot of the work that we're doing and agencies do in general is not as tangible stuff, particularly strategic work and maybe creative work to some degree. You can't see it. So clarity on what the actual requirements are, what the outcome is absolutely crucial to value pricing, and understanding what the value for the client ultimately is really important as well. Because if you don't know those two things, it defaults, and I think this is one of the key points of here. It defaults. The hourly rate pricing model is then an easy default. Yeah. Because the agency isn't clear on exactly what's wanted. the client sort of knows what they're trying to do, but isn't 100% clear on what they want or what their outcome is or what the value of it is. So both default to well, I tell you what, let's base this on hourly pricing. We'll start the work. We think it's going to broadly take this amount of time, but let's set the taxi meter running and see where we get to.
Yeah, we can paint a picture here using the wall analogy, as I'm sure we can build on this throughout the episode. 2 walls could take 10 hours for someone to build. One could be made out of wood, one could be made out of diamonds. Which one's worth more? It's the diamond wall, because it's a raw material. People know the value of the diamond. There's conspiracies that people are actually in the diamond business. They've got actually more diamonds than they're letting on.
Yeah.
So there's all
withholding supply.
Withholding supply. So there's all these kind of
value,
things.
yeah.
So perceived value is another thing, but that's another topic. That's for products and whatnot.
I think it is another topic. It's just an interesting one. We in the agency sector, we don't have that withholding supply to create demand. There's that in gold and diamonds and sort of even in watches is a great example. I think Rolex watches, they only make so many other watch brands, obviously, but the high-end watch brands. But Rolex, they only make so many. They make limited editions. Yeah, there are no barriers in that sense in the agency sector because there are thousands of agencies competing. Yeah. There are agencies setting up, unlike diamonds, where you've got to find the diamonds and then
they're tangible. They exist.
They exist, but also you've got to build a mine to get the things out of the ground. Yeah. And there's a lot of money, cost, and logistics in doing something like that. Of course, that's not the case in the agency sector. We can set up an agency tomorrow doing the same thing as another agency down the road, and suddenly there's competition there. So we don't have that. Yeah.
So clarity, as we've been talking about, is a massive part of the value equation. Yeah. In the sense that how can you prove to your client that your service is diamond grade rather than a wooden wall? Yeah. It takes 10 hours, this service, but it's diamond, it's worth diamonds in the sense, it's going to get you this much ROI or save you this much time or allow you to grow your business in this certain way. Like it's all about demonstrating that value rather than just looking at a material. So Gareth, from what I've read and what you've taught me, it's been a massive goal for a long time in agencies to use value pricing. But a lot of agencies can't seem to pull it off, and I wonder what your take is on that.
Yeah, this concept has been around for a while, but I agree. I think, in my experience, few agencies are able to do it. Lots of people are either trying or wanting to value price, but it's a struggle. And why? I think they're missing out some steps. I think we've touched upon this. I think when rather than charge by the hour, I think agencies that get this value pricing concept and want to work with it start to think about, okay, well, what is the true value of this work that we're doing for a client? Well, it's actually phenomenally more than the hourly rates that we're charging. There's a big value potentially for this work that the client gets, and let's take a chunk of that and say to them, we're going to charge you this because this is going to revolutionize your business or your brand or really increase your sales or whatever it is. And that in its conceptual form is correct. Yeah. But having been brought up and been conditioned to expect agencies to charge hourly rates, clients, of course, don't readily accept that that vastly increased fee and that principle. They would say, no, hang on a minute. Just give me the hourly rates. Just tell me how many hours it is. Yeah. So it's very hard to convince people to do that. And I think we've touched upon the reasons, but just to recap on them, one of the reasons is there needs to be clarity in the first instance of what we're creating here. Yeah. And from both sides, what the client exactly wants and what the agency is going to deliver. And there needs to be a clarity on what the outcome of this stuff is, the wall. The process in producing the garden wall is important, but that's only part of the clarity.
What's the deliverable?
What's the deliverable? 100%. So that's what we need to go back to. And I think we've experienced this together recently this week. And we reflected that it was in work you were doing that on both sides, both of us reflected, actually, you know what? We should have asked a few more questions here because we knew the deliverables, we knew what they wanted, but we didn't ask enough questions on, once you've got the deliverables and the outcome and the clear, you want to know what the value of that outcome really is to the client. And we missed that step, didn't we?
Yeah, so I knew and I know that this certain workflow that is going to be AI enhanced through a Claude skill, if anyone's familiar who's listening, will save a massive chunk of time for anyone who uses it, because it basically involves massive spreadsheets. You can define these questions that are asked pretty much every time in that certain workflow. AI can go in there and pull those answers out reliably, and it saves hours trawling through these separate cells in a spreadsheet. But I have no idea how often that is done, how many team members do that certain workflow, how many days of the week it's done on, how long it usually takes, how long it would take once it's AI enhanced. All of these factors are undefined. And so you can say, okay, I know it's going to be valuable here, but how can you price something that you don't know exactly the impact that it's going to have? If it was very clear, okay, this workflow, because 10 people do it and they save 4 hours each, you're going to save 40 hours of time. So this price is very legitimate because I'm saving you all this time and this is how you usually charge and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't know that.
No.
And that's a learning, that's a learning experience for me, because now I know to dig a little bit deeper, and it's beneficial for both sides. It's not us trying to get more money. It's actually, they can understand what they're paying for.
Yeah, and outside of pricing, if you had known or understood that in more detail, outside of pricing, potentially we could have done a better job. There might be other things that you would have added into that workflow that would have helped, or maybe taken out of that workflow that would have helped. But I think the key for me, that was a revelation for me this week, but not because of one instance with you. It was also a revelation for me when I thought about it, to say, how many times have I not done that and not, in the work that I was doing with clients, not fully understood what the value of this will actually bring them, and how many times have I talked to, and there was 2 instances actually, as I thought about it in the last 2 weeks for me. I've talked to other agencies that I either work with or talk to regularly, and they were asking questions about maybe pricing a project, and they had no idea. They knew what they were doing, that it was a very actually one of them in particular was a very repetitive task, and something that they are very good at. It's not repetitive in the sense that it doesn't have a value, but there's a lot of volume of work, something they're very good at, something they've done a lot in the past and they're experts at. But they have, even after quite a while in business and doing a lot of it, they have very little idea what the actual value to the client is of doing this stuff. There is a value because their clients and clients ask them to do this work regularly and frequently. So there's fundamentally a value, but nobody truly has a handle on what value is it to know. What value to the client? What does it bring them? What does it give them?
Yeah, and there's 2 parts of this, because if you have a repeated service in the form of productized service, which we talk about a great deal, you know the value that brings, and you've demonstrated that probably with multiple clients in the past. But every client is different. So you might be, the value will be different across all of your clients, in the sense that client A could do that certain task that you're helping them with 10 times as much as client B. And so the only way that you can effectively define the value of what it is that you're selling is if you get that part of the equation as well. So it's what you know yourself is in your own workflow that you've done so many times, but actually how that workflow or how that service applies to the client in their certain situation, because it could have very different effects depending on how much help they need in that certain area that you're providing.
Yeah. Totally. So I think that the key point in this for me is that again you've got to have clarity on what the brief, what you're actually providing, what you're doing, what the work and the outcome it required is. You've got to understand what the value is before you price it, the value to them. And if you don't understand what the value is, you haven't got a count hell's chance of value pricing. Yeah. And that's where I think our industry, has so far failed to establish value pricing as a principle and default back to hourly rates, because there is very little knowledge, or people are starting with very little knowledge of what the actual value to the client is, and therefore it's impossible to value price. Then you are at best trying to convince somebody that you've put a sort of monetary value on this stuff and you need a bigger slice of the pie, and that's always going to fall on deaf ears.
A very nice side effect of AI, and we talked about this in the first episode as well, in the sense of it forcing clarity. For pricing, in order for AI to know what your offer is and what you're delivering, you need to be very rigorous. You need to tell it absolutely everything about that certain deliverable. It could be certain, but deliverables is part of it. It could be the time, of course, because that's one part of it as well. The type of clients who it helps. The more rigorous you are in this process, the more effectively AI will know about that certain offer. And then in doing that, you can go, okay, I can see the value a bit more now, and AI can help me kind of ideate and strategize on the value of this, because I've laid it all out rather than it being trapped in people's heads.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
The process is documented, because for AI to help you, it has to know that in painful detail, more than another person would, more than your client would.
Yeah.
AI needs to know completely everything.
If you're going to get a good output from it. Yeah,
exactly. Totally. Yeah. So, Gareth, we talk a lot about the fact that speed is, of course, a massive factor in value, and that hourly-based pricing can almost punish an agency for being good, because as long as the quality remains the same or remains kind of gold standard, getting that dream outcome to a client quicker should be more valuable. But hourly-based pricing would mean that you're charging them less because it didn't take them as long. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, that's long been a criticism of the hourly-based pricing model, actually, that many people will say, as you just sort of touched upon there, that hourly-based pricing encourages agencies to take longer, actually, with the work. If you're being paid by the hour, whether you're in an agency or whether you're gardening, to sort of come back to the garden analogies. Yeah. If you're being paid by the hour, there's no real incentive to finish early, to finish quickly. Yeah. You can. Yeah. The incentive is the mindset naturally would be to take longer, and that's been a criticism of hourly-based pricing for a long time, and that's a good reason for clients to want to get out of that model, actually.
Yeah, because could you even say that it could take an agency 5 hours, but they actually just say, you know what, we're going to take our time, and we'll say it took 15, and then we'll get paid more like that. That's kind of what it incentivizes.
It does, yeah. I mean, I think that could be the case. I'd have to say I've worked in this industry for 25 years or more, and I can't think of any agency really that I know would have purposely done that. The agencies tend to, in my experience, are very sort of quite moral, want to work with their clients, generally, usually, love working with their clients, want to do the best for them. Yeah. So, but that could happen. Could. And even if it doesn't happen explicitly like that, it's subconsciously. There's no incentive to finish early.
Exactly.
There's incentive just to sort of, to fill the hours.
Let's work harder and get paid less.
Yeah. Who's going to do that? So even if it's subconscious, then that can happen. But I think so. That's been talked about for a long time. But there's no. So clients really don't want the hourly rate, but as we've been talking, it's the default way of working. It's the easier route. Yeah. They also don't want somebody to come along and say, "Hey, pick a figure out of the air. This work's going to make you 100 grand. Give us 30 grand of it." That's not what they want either. So we need to define make sure the brief's defined, make sure we understand the value of the outcome for the client, and then construct a pricing proposal that convinces them that A, we know what we're talking about, B, we know what the outcome is going to be, C, there's a value to that and that we understand, and D, this is our price based on that value, and it's a compelling proposal because the value is so is large, but it's also so well defined and laid out that they can't say no, really.
Yeah, it's the offer you can't refuse in the sense that it could be very expensive, the proposal that you make, but the idea is to make it so they can't refuse because they realise that it's worth a lot more than that price that you initially give, and that's all about, like you said, clarity. You know, how can we effectively communicate the value that we're bringing?
So if we'd have been sat here 5 years ago or whatever, maybe you wouldn't be, but you'd have been still at school or something. But if I'd have been sat here 5 years ago, I'd have still been talking about the value of value pricing. But it strikes me that if there's ever a need to change the pricing model, and if there's ever a need to get out of hourly-based pricing, and if there's ever a need to embrace an alternative, which is value pricing, it's now, because AI is absolutely shattering the time equation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or potentially could be, clients are aware, will become increasingly aware that if we've put a time to something, then in terms of hourly-based, labour-based work, AI can drive a coach and horses through that time, can't it?
Exactly. And the main value of AI is speed. I say this all the time because it's true. And obviously we want the quality to still reach the standards that it always has been. If you have work that you've done with a client for the last 10 years and they expect a certain quality, AI, you're going to use it to do the workflow quicker and achieve the same standard and the same quality. But with an hourly based pricing model, if you do the workflow quicker, then you ultimately would get paid less. But I would argue that speed, if you have a dream outcome, the quicker that you can get the client to the desired outcome, the better, because that's just more valuable, isn't it? Instead of waiting 2 weeks, AI could make it so the process takes 2 days to arrive. And instead of the agency sort of leaving it to one side and going, okay, we'll deliver to that client in 2 weeks because we've always done that. And maybe if we deliver in 2 days, they'll start asking questions.
Yeah.
I would think that it would be better to just deliver that value as quick as you can.
Yeah.
And I think the hourly based pricing model, it incentivizes withholding the information, and that's why timesheets was a big conversation of last week's podcast, because in client interactions, now that AI is here, you need to be very clear about how AI is influencing your capacity and how many hours certain workflows are taking. And that's good for internal use and to just be transparent. But even then, we want to deliver the value as quick as possible, as long as the quality remains. And that value-based pricing is the way to do that, because speed is part of the value.
Totally, because if nothing else, then if we don't deliver it quickly with AI, somebody else is going to, aren't they? There's a queue of people in other agencies ready to, whether they can truly deliver on this or not, they're certainly ready and waiting to say to your client, we can do that quicker. We've got an AI tool, we've got an AI workflow, we've got an AI-enabled business, so we're AI native, so we can do this far quicker than you've done it with your old agency. So that competition is there, and we've got to protect ourselves from that if you want to be a standout agency.
And I think that value, of course, let's say AI, as by its nature it will do, is speed up processes and deliver your client value in half the time. You could then potentially do double the work. But double the work in the same amount of time that it used to take should be worth more.
Yeah.
And that's the key of value-based pricing, isn't it? Instead of, let's say that the workflow took 2 weeks, or the service took 2 weeks, now it takes 1 week, we can do it twice over. An hourly-based pricing model would sort of value them the same.
Yeah.
Because it's the same amount of time, but no, you actually got double the value here.
Yeah.
And of course, value-based pricing, you can argue why they got double the value because you can.
There might be different values as well. One client, one project might be very valuable because the outcome is very valuable. The other clients might be less of a value to both them and you, but it's still greater than an hourly rate and more acceptable and commercially viable going forward than an hourly rate.
So time is completely part of the discussion.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's only part of it. It's not the whole.
That's right.
You know, if it could be a case of quality was the only thing that mattered, but then let's say you had a quality, but it took 5 years to reach your client. Then you can't price on just quality either. You have to encompass many different things. Yeah, and that's the core kind of lesson here, isn't it?
Yeah.
That time's only part of it. You can't base your price solely on time.
Yeah.
You need to take in every factor that you can. So, Gareth, based on everything we've discussed here, completely about the value of value pricing, how would you coach and advise an agency, let's say on Monday morning, to move away from hourly-based pricing and to value-based pricing?
Yeah. So I think this needs to be evolution rather than Monday morning, everything changing. And particularly with existing client relationships and commercial agreements, it can't change probably. Certainly not overnight on a day. But I would advise all agencies to be thinking about this more now, particularly again in the age of AI. I think it's really important that they look at the pricing models they've got with clients and maybe choose, if they ever have the opportunity, 1 or 2 clients that they think they can change that pricing model with. But certainly when you're talking to new clients, new prospects, new briefs, we should have a value-based pricing approach, or certainly something to trial and have a look at. And how do you go about that? Well, we've talked about it today, but it's about getting clarity on the outset from exactly what the client wants and needs. It's the garden wall. It won't be a garden wall as an intangible thing, probably, usually, for most agencies. There'll be some intangibles there, but we need to know exactly what we're producing and what the outcome is. We need to know this is the key one. We need to know what the value of that is to the client. How much time, how much money is it going to save them? How many sales is it going to make them? What is the value of those sales? What's the chance of those sales recurring again the following week or month? We need to have more of a commercial understanding of the value of our work, what the value of our work delivers for the clients. Not just it's a website and it's delivered. That's not acceptable anymore. We need to understand, well, what is this website going to do for the client? And it's about questioning. It's about asking more and better questions to have that understanding. Because coming back to the crux of that, if we don't have that understanding of value, we have no chance of moving clients away from this hourly mindset and tuning them into, as an agency, billing on a proportion of that value. We have no chance. We've got to ask those better questions. We found that ourselves recently. We're going to adopt that. So on Monday morning, put yourself in the client's shoes. Always think of that from a client perspective. What is this going to give me? And if you don't know, that's a bit of a shock. That's not a good thing. But the challenge is on Monday morning to start to try and find out. If you're running a business where the value of your work to that client isn't clear, and you're pricing it on an hourly basis, that's not a great business model. Never has been a great business model, actually, but certainly not a great business model going forward.
And here's a top tip. If you want to make your agency AI enhanced, take all of the logic of documenting and figuring it out and mapping clarity, everything we've said in this podcast, and let AI help you do it. And like I've said, the value and a hidden kind of benefit of using AI is it forces clarity. And so get AI to interview you about a certain service that you do with a certain client. And even, it depends how much time you have. You get it to ask you 1,000 questions. Maybe that would take all day, but 100 might do, 50, depending. Get your leadership team in, get AI to interview you, record the meeting
Yeah.
transcript.
Yeah. So the AI sort of acts as the client.
The AI,
Pseudo-client.
the AI could act as a client, or it could act as an interviewer or an alien, which it almost is, trying to figure out the value of what the service is that you bring to that certain client. And then record that transcript. Also bring in, so that's qualitative data, bring in quantitative data, any sort of framework or past credential of a physical, tangible file that's sort of digitized. Bring that into the context as well. You've got the interviews, you've got the frameworks and the files. That should give the AI enough information to then know exactly what your process is, and then it can help you ideate and strategize about exactly how much it's worth as well. So
perfect, great idea.
You're getting AI enhanced, you're also switching over to value-based pricing, and
love it.
That seems like a great deal to me.
Great, love it. Great episode, thanks Callum.
Yeah, always. Thank you very much. And thanks for listening, any listeners who have got this far, and we hope to see you next week.